Welcome to the latest New England Rug Society webinar. I see members of the audience logging in. We will, as usual, wait just a few minutes until most of the audience has joined us. It seems to be going very quickly, and then I will actually start the program today. We're so pleased to have Jim Burns talking to us and showing us many wonderful rugs from his great collection. So just a few minutes. Welcome to everybody. And these few minutes while we wait to see that an unusually large audience has the opportunity to join us today. Welcome to everyone as you join the New England Rug Society webinar on Caucasian rugs with Jim Burns. Just waiting a few minutes as I watch the members of the audience logging in to make sure we have most people. It's going quite quickly, so we'll be starting in just a moment. Welcome as you're joining us. We're waiting for people to get into the webinar and be logged in, and then we will be starting. I see most people have now joined, and so I will go ahead and start our webinar today, Caucasian Rugs, 6 decades of perspective on design and taste with Jim Burns. We are so pleased to have Jim Burns sharing his rugs, his knowledge, and his long perspective with us. So on behalf of the New England Rug Society, welcome to everyone. Just a few announcements before I turn the introduction of Jim over to my esteemed colleague, Julia Bailey. We will be taking questions at the end, and I will pose questions to Jim Burns, who's very pleased to answer questions. The way to submit questions is using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please type in your questions. You can type them in at any time during the presentation, and I will take them at the end and share questions with Jim Burns. We will not be responding to anyone who uses the raised hand function, nor will we respond to anyone with a question in chat. Should anyone have a technical issue, please do put it in chat and I will do my best to address it. We are recording this webinar today, and the recordings of all of the New England Rug Society webinars are available to New England Rug Society members to watch at a time of your convenience once that webinar has been completed. So welcome to everybody, and on to you, Julia.
I join Jean in welcoming you to our latest New England Rug Society webinar, a 2-part extravaganza featuring Jim Burns. Jim is a Seattle lawyer, but he's much better known to the rug community as a prominent collector and the author of 3 major books, the first of which, written way back in 1987, was The Caucasus, Traditions in Weaving. Today and next Saturday, Jim is returning to that subject. After a historical introduction, he will illustrate today's talk with examples, many examples from his own collection. So buckle up and enjoy part 1 of the tour. From wherever you are, please join me and Jean in extending a warm welcome to our speaker, Jim Burns. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Julia. Good day, rug enthusiasts. We will look at some rugs today from my collection. Part one will be the West and South Caucasus, and next Saturday we'll visit the East Caucasus. Due to time restrictions, we will look at pictures of rugs, but will not be able to dive into the structural analysis or details. So you can write down the questions you may have, and we will attempt to answer those. This map is a map that I prepared for my 1987 book on Caucasian rugs, and I brought it back. I think that probably most of our viewers are familiar with the Caucasus, but as you know, it's an area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It's above Persia, Iran, and I've put down the major areas which we're going to discuss, the West and the South today. And the Caucasus will have a little historical aspect. First of all, the Caucasus was nominally ruled by Persia in the 17th and 18th century, but the Khans, various Khans, ruled the districts. When the Safavid dynasty collapsed in 1722 in Persia, Persia became more decentralized as far as their rule in the 18th century. We have the various tribal Shahs, and we have the Zand dynasty out of Shiraz. And what this did was it allowed the Khans, princes, as you might call them, in the Caucasus, pretty much autonomy over their people and without much intervention by Persia. So the various Khans had their wealth was involving basically sheep, land, and rugs. Just about every Khan had a workshop and would turn out with the best wool, silk, the best weavers, and during the 18th century, and vied with each other while not warring with each other with their collections of rugs. And then Russia started to conquer the Caucasus in 1804, and by 1825, Russia was most of the Caucasus, had most of it, and they brought their rules and their regulations and their Christian religion, which caused a lot of turmoil in the Caucasus. We know from a diary, Major Keppel, a British major, visited the Caucasus in 1824 and kept a diary, which John Lefebvre, the auctioneer, London auctioneer, related in his Caucasian book. And the Khans were actually being deposed. They were leaving with their rugs and their weavers. And the populace was very, very upset. The Mogon people down south decided they did not want to be under Christian leadership. And so they moved across the Araxes River into Persia and became part of the Shah Savan. So starting around the 1820s, Russia commercialism started to replace these really fine weavings that the Khans had done for them. Now, the Russians' commercialism, the rugs sort of lost their understanding of their relevance regarding the tribal design and creativity. I mentioned this because my collecting preference is this 18th century and early 19th century with authentic tribal designs, color, quality, prayer rugs that people prayed on instead of prayer design carpets, which they turned out by the thousands. So we'll be talking about that area of the Caucasus, 18th century and early 19th century. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is some Armenian rugs. This is a map that was on the cover of Holly. Hopefully you can see it, but it's divided into areas where the Turkic people were, where the Armenian people were. You see Shirvan, which was a big Khanate up towards the Caspian Sea. This is this map. The red parts of this map are where the Armenians were in 1895 in a survey. So you can see they were pretty much all over the Caucasus as well as in Turkey. So we'll be discussing the Armenian rugs. I had the pleasure of being on a panel with Ulrich Sherman in 1988 at Geneva, Switzerland, for an Armenian Rug Society symposium. So over a 3-day period, we looked at several hundred Armenian rugs. The Avakian brothers, one brother had a shop in London and one had it in Switzerland. They had over 100 Armenian rugs. So we looked at hundreds of Armenian rugs, and people were coming from all over the world, Australia, South Africa, bringing rugs. So we had a real show of them. Some of these rugs were inscribed with greetings. The Armenians were giving rugs as gifts to churches, as well as to symbolize certain birthdays and weddings and so forth. And so some of these rugs had inscriptions. Some of them had Armenian lobe crosses on them. We'll see an example of that we're looking at right now. And some were dated with the Gregorian calendar dates. The Armenians used the Gregorian calendar. And so when you see a Gregorian calendar date, like we have versus Islamic date, it's a tendency to say it's Armenian woven. So we'll look at this silk piece, 17th century Armenian silk embroidery. It's a cotton foundation with silk embroidery. It was on the cover of my Caucasus book in 1987. And the close-up on the right, you can see a lobed cross in the middle of a green medallion. And this is a significant thing as far as identifying Armenian work, is that some of them had crosses in them. This piece has the crosses in each corner and also in the middle. And the design with this medallion and these basically 8-pointed stars and these curvilinear legs attached to these ends of them is an old Armenian design. It was traced back to an Armenian church, really early Armenian church, this design, and it followed through in the pattern of this rug. This next piece is a fairly rare piece. They refer to it as the marching peacock border. On the right is a close-up shot of it. And you can see that up at the top of the rug, there's a date, which is August 1, 1800. And then there's a row of these lobe crosses, signifying that this is an Armenian piece. And you'll notice the Armenian crosses are there. It's kind of a rare example. There's not many of these around. This one's a little beat up, but it has really intense colors. And you'll notice between the marching peacocks, another significant thing is the tail feathers of the peacock in between the marching peacocks. This next piece is an Armenian piece. It's a beautiful piece, a really early piece. You notice the lobe crosses going down the middle of the piece, and some abstract tree forms, green tree forms in the field. And looking at the border of this piece, the reciprocal trefoil is a very popular design for borders. You'll notice in this Armenian piece that instead of the arrows being reciprocal, you have an arrow and then a cross, and an arrow and a cross. Obviously, this could be a piece that was made for a church, but it's a really old, beautiful wool, exceptional piece. This next piece, Dr. Sherman had it in his book, Islamic Carpets. We actually discussed it in our talk in Geneva in 1988. And in fact, we asked Dr. Sherman why it was Armenian. And he said, well, he says, what we do is we eliminate other things. It has a wool warp and weft with the red dyed weft, but it's not a Kazakh. It doesn't have the same structure as a Kazakh. It's longer and narrower, where most of the Kazakhs have a different size. It has a different coloration than the Kazakh areas. It has the little birds around the square medallion in the center, and it's kind of hard to see, but maybe on the right there you see the little birds right around that square medallion. And he said it has a sophistication that we don't see in the Eastern Anatolian pieces, and I believe it's an Armenian piece. And it's a fairly rare piece, and I was really delighted when I had the opportunity to buy that piece recently, as it really is a wonderful little piece. All right, the pinwheel Kazakh, so-called, we believe is Armenian. First of all, it has a dye. It's a Kermes insect dye, which the Armenians used. There were these little Kermes, basically parasites, and they were found in the Armenia area. And on the early pieces, the Armenians used the Kermes instead of madder for the red. You'll also note that in these white flowers is a lobed cross. Now, this pattern was so popular that it was reproduced all through the 19th century. And I believe not only by Armenians, but by the Azeri population, because it was so popular. But this piece is an early piece, probably circa 1800. And we believe it's an Armenian thing, so forth. This is a long rug. You can see where they put the little lobe crosses in between the stars and the border. And it's probably from the more southern part of the Caucasus. Now we're going to visit the Western Caucasus. And the Western Caucasus basically is a very, very big area with, according to Mr. Lefebvre, 160 different ethnic weaving groups. So when we talk about the Western Caucasus, the name Kazakh comes up. We believe it was a name that might have been invented by Dr. Karamov, who was a Azerbaijani scholar. He did a book in 1954, and it was in Russian and Azerbaijani. And then it was copied a year later, the information, by Dr. Sherman's book on Caucasian rugs, which came out in 1965. Now, we're not sure that the identification of these rugs are correct because there's so many different weaving groups, but it's useful as a means of communication between collectors, and it's a lexicon we go by. So we'll start with the so-called Kazakhs, which may be invented by the Karamov and followed up by Sherman. It's a mountain area, and they weave thick, heavy rugs, all wool construction, red wefts, high pile. And some of these rugs are woven by Armenians, and some are woven by Azeri Turks. And they're basically 3 villages we're going to visit with Azeri people. There's the Borjalu, the Fatrolo, and the Karachov. And these villages were not far apart, but they had a distinctive design and vocabulary, similar sizes. Now, this little prayer rug has a date on it, and it's important because the dates on these prayer rugs or other rugs help us identify other rugs that don't have dates. Now the date is important, but it's not altogether that certain. So the handle is really the more important thing. You have to have the rug in your hands, look at the back, look at the front, and compare it with other rugs to get an idea of the age. But these dated rugs do help us because they're basically the only direct evidence we have of the age of these pieces. So this is a Borjalu, one of the villages, distinctive design. They have its white main border. Excuse the interruption. They have this distinctive white main border with latch hooks, and this is an early piece that has deeply saturated colors, red, green, and a really nice purple. And it's just a traditional field with these hooked medallions. Here's an older example of the Borjalu, and it has the nice piled wool, that traditional border, and the hooked medallions. This is a variant of the Borjalu. It's fairly rare, with these 3 rows of multicolored hexagons. But as you can see, the traditional main border, which actually goes into the field, and they protrude in the field, and very colorful, a lot of different colors, fairly rare. We move to the Fatrolo area, village. They have a distinctive look as compared to the others. They like these medallions, like large medallions, deeply saturated colors. Now, this border is an early border, and it appears on a Fatrolo prayer rug in Ralph Caffel's Caucasian prayer rug book, plate 19, which is dated 1806. So that helps us date this piece, which I believe is around 1820. And we do that by comparing this rug with other rugs. You have to have a lot of rugs in your vocabulary mind and a good memory and in order to attempt this type of dating. Here's another Facciolo piece, the large borders. That red border with the white stars is a kind of a significant traditional design for Facciolos. They like that design, and it's kind of a tip off if you're looking at that village rug. Now we go to the third village, the Karachov. This piece is dated 1788. It's the best one I've ever seen. And it's got these bold, well-spaced design elements. The later pieces are more cramped, has a beautiful abroche blue-green field and a scarab palmette border, which is one of my favorite borders. You notice it has these boxes in each corner with 9 stars. And in the medallion itself, the central medallion, at the corners are stars. And that's kind of a tip off as to the Karachov area. This rug was important to me, and frankly, I sold 2 lesser pieces after I got this. And as collectors, you probably should, if you find a better rug, buy it and try to off the lesser rug. That's easier said than done. But after having this rug, I didn't want these other 2. This is a pre-Karachov, a proto-Karachov, so to speak. It's probably middle of the 18th century. It's just a fragment, it's half of a rug. You'll note these star boxes again, as we saw in the other Karachov piece with the 9 stars. Also, you see the medallion up at the top. And if you look, you'll see little stars around as in the Karachov. That is wonderful wool, a great little shield border, and a really rare piece. This next piece, the Star Kazakh, is probably a Karachov because of the border. It's a village rendition of the Star Kazakh. Most of the Star Kazakhs, I think, are manufactured by workshops. One in my book, my 87 book, was a kind of traditional one we talk about. This is a tribal one, which is very rare. And I don't know which came first, the tribal variety copied by the workshop piece or the workshop piece copied by the tribal. But in any event, you have this really colorful, beautiful greens and reds. And it's these sort of rhomboid devices with hooks, kind of go back to the Armenian silk piece we looked at. It's kind of you see the star and then you see these rhomboid pieces coming off the edge of it. So that pattern looks like it could have been derived from the Armenian piece. Yeah, I wanted to show you a picture of the back just to show you how old this piece is. And you can see the red weft. We don't have the time to go through all these rugs and look at the backs, because the backs really are important and significant and help you define the age. This is a Memling gull type Kazakh. It's early, probably 18th century. It's the oldest one, the best of type that I've seen. a spacious drawing, luscious wool. Even the yellow secondary field medallions are crammed, not cramped like later examples. The border is got a black field, which is corroded. And I had it in my book, but I wanted to bring it out again as it's such an important rug. Now we go to a different group in the West Caucasus, and we're not sure who made them. They're called Suwin in the trade or in the literature. There is a Lake Suwin in Armenia, but I don't know what it has to do with it. This is a very early example, probably mid-18th century. It's got the somber tomes. It's a garden design. It has the white water going around with the stylized fish. Those little S's are stylized fish, and sort of a copy of the Persian garden carpets, this group. They have a blue weft, dyed blue weft, and some of them are cotton and some of them are wool. We're going to look at 3 of them today. This one is very archaic. You see tribal symbols like those X's, so-called X's, and other things, which the other ones don't have. This is the early archaic one. And we'll look at the next group. This one is around 1800. It's still somber, still has the blue wefts. It has the pool with the fish. It has an old border. If you look closely, you'll see an X device in the border. Could be a carryover from the earlier archaic one. This is a comparable example to the one owned by Joe McMullen and pictured in his book, Islamic Carpets, dated 1797. This rug, I think, is comparable. That's why we give it a date of 1800. And then we go to a 1850 example. And it's a pretty rug, but it doesn't have the archaic tribal flavor or primitive identity, raw, somber colorations. And I miss those archaic things. That's what I like, these tribal archaic designs that show you what these people did early on. Here's a later Kazakh prayer rug, probably circa 1850. You see it has that same square medallion with the latch hooks that the earlier piece had that we looked at. It has a scrolled border, and this weaver put white horses in the center of a red field. This Kazakh has a very early border, but it's not an early rug, probably 1820, but it's a very interesting border. One of the things I like about Caucasian rugs are these village weavers that weave the horses, and they're menfolk, and looks like a man on a horse at the bottom, and it looks like a woman, maybe his wife, up above. These folk things kind of endear this art to we collectors. This is a Laurie Palmbach piece. It has 2 medallions instead of the usual 3. Has a very intense red and green. It has this abstract cruciform device and the octagonal medallions. And this lady put snakes in her border. And you can see in the close-up snake, and I don't know why she did that. There's an old wife's tale about how they would put snakes in the border or the snakes in the rug or some other type of things, spiders or so forth, so they wouldn't have them above it. I don't know whether that's true or what, but anyway, this lady put some snakes in her border. Now we're going to go to the Genji people. The Genjis, they're a district that lies between the Western Caucasus area and the Karabakh district. They borrowed designs from their neighbors. It was a Persian Khanate until it was conquered by the Russians in 1804. Population was mostly Armenians and Azeri Turks. This is a type of a traditional design border for Genja with these vertical stripes with the flowers in it. And the colorations are different than the Kazakhs, but they borrow from both of their neighbors. It's a little Genja prayer rug. It's dated 1823 or 1828. It's kind of a rare prayer rug type. That border device is a kind of a traditional Genja device. Has cotton weft and the lattice field with the flowers. Ralph Caffel called this a Genja in his prayer rug book, plate 33. This is another rare piece, a Genja. It's elongated membrane gulls, and it has what we call infinitive latch hooks. They seem to go on forever. Again, it has a cotton weft and wool warp, and I've only seen a couple of these pieces. Now we're going to visit the South Caucasus, and the South Caucasus basically, as I said, Lefebvre mentioned that there was 160 different ethnic weaving groups in his book, and actually he said that in a Holly article. And it's difficult to place weaving groups to rugs. Dr. Karamov and Dr. Sherman have given tribal names to the various designs, types, and we collectors generally go by that lexicon. Generally, the rugs are longer and narrower than those in the West. Medium cut pile versus high pile, like the Western pieces. There were very, very different people there. The khans, different khans had their own workshop. This piece, I believe, is 16th century. It's a Caucasian fragment. It's the center of a very large carpet. You can see the large medallion. It indicates the power of the early day khans. You see the totemic example, the totemic whatever that figure is in the center. And then it has these kind of brackets that go up and down. And it's definitely not a commercial piece, but for Khan's own palace, have to be a palace in order to accommodate such a big piece. It's a wonder that it survived at all. The smaller medallions on each end are gone. And the reason we believe it's 16th century is we compare it to other pieces, and it just has a raw, archaic design and presence. There's later versions. There's one 1700 one with a similar large central medallion, pictured on the back cover of Holly magazine issue 42. But this piece is just, you look at those latch hooks. Have you ever seen latch hooks as big as that going around this central medallion? I'm going to do a close-up of the top of this rug to show you a double eagle. And to the left, you'll see two snakes. And actually on the right, there's a green part of a snake. And the eagle was a symbol of power from ancient times. The eagle, with its fine eyesight and its powerful thrust, was the king of birds. And a lot of early kings used a symbol of the eagle to denote their power. In fact, even later, Imperial Russia had a double eagle, and the Habsburgs had double eagle. And so this is probably a tribal symbol of the group that made this piece. Now here's an 18th century example of workshop piece. And you can see on the left that same symbol of the earlier rug with the same latch hooks, but not as big, and the same medallion border going around this yellow border. And then on the right is the so-called eagle sunburst design, which I also believe is an ancient Caucasian symbol that's been brought down through their textiles. Here's a close-up of that border, that medallion. You can see the resemblance. It's that tribal symbol in the middle with the brackets going up on either side, the latch hooks and the border. And there's a close-up of the so-called eagle design. And now this is an 18th century piece. I might mention that the construction is similar between this piece and the earlier piece. They both have wool warps that are twisted with brown and white. They have the same knot count, and probably the same people are making these rugs. Now here's a 1820 example of the sunburst. And you'll notice they have the sunburst in the middle. And then at each end, you have the trees with the censer in between. The censer was used in church for incense. Later, this is a very popular design all through the 19th century. The later so-called chellabard pieces do not have the trees and the censers. But it's a nice design, and it was copied quite a bit throughout the 19th century. This is a very unique and interesting prayer rug. Holly did a thing on it saying it was of a different era. It's been carbon dated to the middle 18th century. We don't know who made it, but it looks like it was probably made for an important person. You see at the top eagles on either side of the mihrab. I'm going to do a close-up of the center medallion. And you'll notice in this central medallion, it has the looks like and called scorpions on either side of the central medallion inside the inside medallion. Now that scorpion design is pretty rare. And the only other scorpion I've seen in a rug is the one that was on Dr. Sherman's book, Caucasian Rugs. And it probably is a symbol of the tribe of the Khan that owned this piece. Here's another picture of it. Here is on the left is my piece, and on the right is the scorpion that appears on the cover of Dr. Sherman's book. So it's an important piece. There's a close-up of the eagles on either side of the prayer rug. Now, this piece, so-called Kasum Ushag by Dr. Sherman and Karamoff, it's probably circa 1800. A similar example with the same kind of scrolling border sold at Sotheby's, London, October 11th, 1990, lot 627. It was dated 1796. So I feel that this piece is probably in that same era. And you'll notice Dr. Sherman believed these were made by Kurds. I don't know why he said that, but you'll notice that there are two double-headed eagles on either side of the top of this piece. So it could be by the same group that had that eagle as a tribal symbol early on. This is really a fine piece. We believe it's dated around 1700. It's not dated, but we believe it's circa 1700. It's a very unusual piece, and I have not found anything in the literature that looks like it. It has these beautiful lotus flowers coming in from the border. And it's the way the lotus is depicted in Persian weavings. So my belief is it's probably a Persian workshop in the Caucasus around that time. It's an unusual size. They're usually bigger. It has a beautiful blue-green border, and the red is a very, very interesting red that they have in the field. This is a 18th century piece, very, very beautiful, with these boxes. We don't know who made those, that made this piece. It has cotton wefts, so we consign it to the South Caucasus rather than to Kazakh area, whatever. And that wool is soft and luxurious. The carnation border, you see those carnations in the white background. It's a very ancient symbol. You see it really on Roman floors early on. And following up, and then it has a very interesting kind of a tree design in the abstract tree design in the main border. One of my favorite pieces. Now here's a later example. You see that same border with minor borders with the Caucasian or the carnations. And this, the main border has that lobe cross and the flowers. It could be an Armenian piece. Some other people think that this compartment type carpet is Armenian work. I'm not sure, but it's a later piece, but very nice. Now this piece is very hard to put into a weaving area. Its coloration is very interesting. It has a light purple and a peach color in the 8-sided star medallions, and the geometric large hook devices surrounding the star is unusual and unique to my rug scholarship, 18th century. I decided to put a dragon variant sumac in just to illustrate all the beautiful little interesting tribal designs and symbols that this weaver put into her rug. As you know, these large pieces were used for sleeping. They had the weft that would come through the back, maybe 3 or 4 inches, and they would heat it up by their fireplace and then sleep under it at night in those cold winter nights. And it's a kind of an early piece. We think it's around 1800. This piece is hard to define. We consign it to Carabao area. It has a very interesting design. That border appears in some commercial large rugs. This is a village copy. As I say, very interesting wool and coloration. This Carabao piece has the bodas in it, this crimson field. The red is a kermes insect dye, 18th century, extremely finely woven, beautiful colors, cotton weft, wool warp, 18th century. This is a piece made by the Kurds in the South Caucasus. We identify it by the serpent border, the main border. It's a Kurdish device. And they have little birds throughout the field. 18th century piece. Here's another Kurdish piece, also 18th century. Red field. I'm going to do a close-up for you so we can see it a little bit better. You can see the very different colors, all beautiful colors. And we have a turtle border. And the turtle, you can see it has the 3 diamonds on it, as turtles do, is a Kurdish border used quite a bit. My Kurdish book, I have several examples with this turtle border, 18th century piece. Now we're going to visit the Mogan people. Mogan borders Persia and Talish to its south. And there's many different and distinct groups of people living there, live there, presenting a very diverse style of weaving. Majority of the people were semi-nomadic Azeri Turks. The weaving construction favored both wool and cotton threads. When Russia conquered the area in the early 19th century, a large proportion of the population migrated to northern Persia, brought their sheep with them. They didn't want to be under Russian rule, and they continued to weave their traditional designs there as part of the Shah Savan. But it's kind of indicative of the turmoil that was going on. They certainly didn't want to be under Christian rule. Anyway, this is an 18th century example. Has an interesting Memling gull type. They're actually pole medallions. And a lot of tribal emblems throughout the field and the border, talismans, corroded black field, 18th century, interesting rug. Now, this Mogan is a really traditional Mogan. I've seen, I think, hundreds of these rugs with this yellow field with the trellis and the flowers. And it seems to be, to my estimation, the most popular design that the Mogan people did before they moved across the border. You'll note the border device. I want you to remember that because it helps us identify other Mogans. All of these groups would have different field designs, but they would retain the traditional border. So this is a traditional border and traditional rug. We identify this piece by its border. It's difficult. It's to ascertain. So many groups were making them in the Mogan area. But this border is a Mogan border. And this piece, I don't know if you can see the close-up, but they have reindeer and animals and incredible good wool. Beautiful carpet. This is a Mogon piece. Some people would misidentify it as Talish, but it's definitely a Mogon. Although you see that border has the large rosette and the small pieces. It's kind of similar, but the neighbors are right next door. The wool in these early Mogons was incredible. You can see this great abrash green, the lovely wool. Now this piece, people would identify as a Faucherlow, but it's not. It has cotton wefting. I believe it's a Mogon piece, an early piece. Very interesting green, beautiful green. This is a piece again. There's copies of this by other groups, but I think this is a Mogon piece. Again, you see that border device has, this has very, very wonderful wool. Another Mogon piece, basically a Tree of Life variant, great wool. And this is an older Mogon piece around 1800. The picture really doesn't justice. That blue is very, very great. And that nice border going around. And that is the extent of the West and the Southern Caucasus for today. I'm turning it back to you, Julia. Or Jane.
Thank you, Jim. Jean Hoffman back here to thank you for your wonderful presentation and tour of the first part of your collection. Everybody, please do note, as on Jim's last slide, we will have part 2 a week from today, exactly the same time, December 11th. And the invitation for part 2 will come in the Zoom follow-up for everyone who registered for today. But before we let you go, Jim, we do have a number of questions, and let's field these questions. So there are a couple of groups of questions, and anyone who has a question, please feel free to type it into the Q&A. Questions and comments from chat will not be taken, but questions in Q&A, we will do our best to relay them to Jim to answer. So questions about Kazakhs. Why do you think that the later ones got so crowded?
The later ones got crowded?
Congested is actually the word that the questioner used. Why did the design of later Kazakhs get so congested?
Well, I don't know. I suspect that they just wanted to put more things into the rug. The later ones basically are Russian commercial workshop pieces. There are some village pieces. You know, the rug designs and colors kind of deteriorated over the 19th century. So people became poor under Russian occupation, and Khans had left. So the earlier pieces, I don't know, they probably just better quality pieces and so forth. The later pieces.
Okay, getting a little more specific about your rugs, and we have quite a few questions, so we're going to try to move through them. The
Sure.
Star Kazakh you showed, what makes that an old tribal rug rather than an old workshop rug? It's clearly old, but tribal versus workshop, please explain.
Which one?
The Star
The
Kazakh.
Star Kazakh.
Oh, why is it a tribal piece?
Yes.
Well, you see the border on it. Yeah, there it is. The border on it is a traditional tribal border. It almost looks like people with bars. Other people see flowers and so forth. But if you look at a workshop piece, it's very, very different. Like the piece in my Caucasian book, 1987, is a workshop piece. And it just has different wool, different look. It doesn't have the Kazakh look, really. It's some kind of a derivative. Probably that's, I mean, this is just as you saw the back of it, it's different weave and different look and same design.
Thank you. So a couple of questions pertain to crosses in Armenian rugs. Is there any context in which those crosses could be really a shape or design feature rather than a Christian signal in the rugs?
Design features. You know, a lot of the rugs that I looked at in 1988 in Geneva were what you would consider Caucasian, Kazakh rugs, but they were woven by Armenians. And so maybe a lot of those so-called pieces, other than those three villages I was discussing, could be made by both Armenians and Azeri Turks. So why do I think there's some religious connotations to this rug? Because of the crosses, not only in the border, but in the middle. It just looks out a gift to a church. That's what it says to me.
Thank you. So one questioner missed the sunburst or eagle rug where the censure was. What does it look like? What was that?
What does it look like?
Yes, which one was that?
That one. What? Back up. There you go. I'm sorry. What does it look like?
Yes, show us that censure. Somebody didn't see it.
Incense burner. You want to see the
What do you
incense
want to see on that piece? Are you talking about the 18th century one or the 16th century one?
Honestly, I'm relaying a question and I don't know. I was hoping it would trigger you, Jim.
I
There
can't.
was a mention of that, but let's move on.
the incense burner.
Move on from that.
Yes, if you
Further.
could comment on the
Oh,
different.
the censor. Are you
Yes, the
talking about
censor.
the censor on the Eagle Kazakh? Yeah, it's a censor. You know, in church you have the censor and you have the
Incense
priest
burner.
usually with the giving the censer
Incense.
incense from the censer and blessing people with it and blessing the icons and blessing this and that.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't understand the spelling, so my apologies and thank you for clarifying. Could you comment on the different types of Sivan rugs or Suan, how you pronounce it? The
Yeah,
keyhole
Sivan.
versus the shield, and what those may mean for, is there any meaning for Armenians?
No, it's back. Are you talking about the, let's see if we can get back there.
The people.
There was a garden one that was a very early one.
Oh, hold it.
There we go. One forward from, there we
All
go.
right. Well, you see how primitive this is. And you see these different, these X's and up at the top, this, whatever this form is. And it's too bad we didn't show a back of this rug because it's just very, very old. But you can see how primitive and archaic it is. In contrast, say the next version, which is 1800, which is 50 years later. This piece doesn't have those archaic things. Now you see those little X's, but see how minor they are. Down at the bottom, for instance, you see that X and contrast it to this X. I mean, they're not X's, but they look like X's. It's kind of pale in comparison. And then, of course, if you go to the 1850 example, you lose all that archaic symbolism of that tribe. And that's not usually what I collect. I like the symbolism and the archaic and the real authentic early pieces, not commercialized by Russians and so forth.
Many old Anatolian rugs are dated by art historians through their appearance in paintings, and indeed their names are now the names from the artists who painted them. Are there any clues to the dates of Caucasian rugs from old paintings?
You know, that's interesting, because that the Turkish rugs were very popular. You remember Henry VIII had a collection of them, and the painters painted the people like Henry VIII, and you saw a rug underneath his feet, and you knew that since the painting was painted in 1550 or something, that the rug had to be at least 1550, probably a lot older. It could have been 100 years older. But at least we know that from the paintings that what it is. We don't have that with the Caucasian rugs. The artists weren't using the props as they did. And the Europeans weren't buying them. You know, the Caucasus was very closed and you know, people couldn't go there. There were gangs of people that would hold them for ransom and all sorts of things that happened early on. And the trade just wasn't there. And of course, the Khans themselves were, you know, they really didn't do much with the importing or exporting or whatever it is. And even with the tulip, you know, that was discovered in the Caucasus Mountains, that the Khans would not let those tulips out, the bulbs. And remember, some Turks smuggled them out, and then they started selling them in the Netherlands. And we had the tulip mania. But it kind of shows that they were very closed off, these Khans, and very, they didn't allow people into their villages and so forth. And so it really didn't have the trade that the Turkish rugs had.
Thank you for that explanation. Question about stars. You mentioned a 9-pointed star in the Karatop rugs. One of the members of our audience is familiar with 8-pointed stars. Can you please enlighten us about the 9-pointed star in the Karatop?
Oh, and yeah, I don't know why that Karatop, why that is a thing. Let's go back and see if we can find that piece. All right, there's the earlier one. Yeah, what is the significance of the nine stars? Don't know. It's obviously a tribal significance, because you see they have the 9 stars in this box, and they have the 9 stars in the earlier box. They have the stars and the medallion at the bottom of the medallion, around the medallion, you see the stars around that octagonal medallion. The stars, you know, there's probably the stars in the sky. And the Caucasian weavers use nature. You see mostly flowers and trees and animals and stars and all of the things that are in their world, moons, so forth.
Thank you. Some questions about identifying Mogan rugs.
Yes.
Do they have red wefts? And other than you mentioned borders, what are some other ways you identify Mogans, please?
Yeah, the Mogan doesn't have red wefts, but the Mogan is sort of like the Talish in size, but different. It has that Mogan border that is kind of identifies them. They have really nice wool, and they sort of, you know, when they left the Caucasus in the early 19th century, they sort of left the quality of the wool with them, because the wools that the Shah Savan Mogan people, I mean, it's not as lush, and the colors are not as wonderful. I mean, It's anyway, it's hard to identify except that they're long and narrow usually. They have incredible wool, and you saw the examples.
Thank you. So one of the members of our audience suggests that the oldest pieces can have a different smell.
Smell?
Any thoughts? Have you ever noticed your old rugs having an older smell?
You know, every time a rug comes into my possession, I wash it. The first thing I do. First of all, I want to get rid of the moths that might be embedded. And secondly, I want the colors to come out. And the only smells that I recall is when I used to buy rugs in New York City, in those little warrens down on early rug district. They always had a tobacco smell because the dealers were always smoking cigarettes. And when I washed the rugs, they would run yellow for about 3 washings to get rid of that. But I don't know any other smell.
You referred to the little people and animals sometimes woven into rugs,
Yes.
and that some of these were personal, village symbols from the women's lives. I've also heard people, the questioner says, refer with disdain to the little animals as being something put in later rugs to appeal to Western taste. Any further comments on those?
Why they do that?
Yes. And were they, at least in the older rugs, really villagey, personal?
Well, I think they did it in the older rugs as well as the newer rugs, because the village weavers, these women would like to put tribal symbols and family things into their rugs and personalize them. And you'll see some of the rugs in my earlier book have a group all joining hands, father, wife, kids, dog. I mean, it was something I think is very nice, very familiar, something that we really like to see, especially in these village rugs. You notice they didn't do them in the workshop rugs, as occasionally, but all these little things to avert the evil eye and all the superstitious symbols and so forth makes the rug more interesting to me.
You started, your very first section was Armenian rugs, and you showed a map indicating that Armenians lived everywhere. Can
Yes.
you please elaborate?
Elaborate? Well,
Yeah.
the reason I showed that was just to indicate that the Armenians were really a big part of the Caucasus, and they really didn't get their by the rug experts. I really didn't talk much about them, and I think that the works that they did should be more publicized and what have you. And it showed this map just to show that there were so many Armenian people that were spread out through the Caucasus.
Thank you. I'm going to summarize a complicated question from a very knowledgeable rug person whom I would encourage to email you afterwards to get into more of a debate. The summary of the question is whether it was possible that there was a Tabriz or Armenian enterprise after Nadir Shah, in other words, post-Safavid period. You showed 3 examples of huge workshop carpets, generally given as 18th century. These were noted also have been published in Charles Grant Ellis's Caucasian carpets.
You're talking about Armenian rugs?
Yes.
Let's see, where are they? Which ones were you referring to?
So I'm relaying a question and it doesn't refer to specific rugs. I think we should move on. This questioner can follow up with you directly because it's a complicated question.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a last question because we need to wrap up. And that last question is an important one, Jim. Do you have a favorite Caucasian rug?
You know, I have a top 10, so to speak. You know, everyone has their core top 10. And I don't have a real favorite. I just like a lot of them. I'm addicted. I love the beautiful abstract design flowers and so forth. Now, I also like curvilinear flowers, but in the Caucasus, they do these flowers and all these different trees and stuff in an abstract form. And I really like all of my pieces. But there's a top 10 that I would never part with.
Thank you. We'll be fortunate, and I am looking forward to next week, December 11th, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, for part 2 with Jim Burns, discussing Caucasian rugs and showing us more from his collection, and I'm sure more of your top 10 and favorites, and more opportunities to ask questions. So on behalf of Julia Bailey and myself, the New England Rug Society, thank you, Jim. And thank you to our large audience from all over the world. We hope you found this talk as interesting as we did. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.